Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
We are going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May meeting of the Board of Early Education and Care. Thank you all for joining us today, whether you're here in the room or joining us remotely. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and Friday was Child Care Provider Appreciation Day here in Massachusetts. These recognitions are important and meaningful reminder of the dedication, skill, and heart that early educators bring to their work each and every day. We're deeply grateful for all that they do to support our youngest learners and their families. Thank you to all of you. Today's agenda includes key updates and decisions that reflect our shared priorities, access, quality, and workforce support. We'll begin with a review of the FY26 state budget. We'll also hear about the next phase of the CPPI initiative, a vital effort to expand affordable, high-quality preschool, and get an update on the development of the new educator credentialing system designed to support professional growth across all settings. Thank you again for being here, and we'll get started with comments from the Secretary. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Secretary.
This thing working. First, as we are on the heels of Teacher Appreciation Week and Child Care Provider Appreciation Day, I also want to echo my thanks and deep appreciation to our early educators. As I frequently remind anyone who will listen, any time is a good time to give an educator his, her, or their flowers, to thank them for their commitment, for their dedication in working with and for children and their families. Since 1980, the first full week in May has been the week during which we formally express our thanks. To all of our early educators, we appreciate you. Unfortunately, you do not hear it enough. Thank you. Most folks know me to be humble most of the time, but I do feel duty-bound to lift up and celebrate that Massachusetts was recently named the best state for working moms. There are, whoop, whoop. I'm liking the way this is going so far.
You got everyone's attention.
There are several metrics involved with this distinction, pay equity, leave policies, and so forth, but allow me to call out high-quality childcare as one criterion that weighed heavily in that distinction. Yet another reason to celebrate and appreciate early educators. By way of reminder, Literacy Launch is Governor Healey's proposed initiative to set Massachusetts on a path toward broader implementation of evidence-based early literacy strategies. As I believe many know, the legislature granted $20 million toward this initiative in the first year of a multi-year effort. At a high level, the dollars will accelerate accountability for evidence-based early literacy instruction and teacher prep programs, expand access to evidence-based high-quality instructional materials, support a subset of school districts, K-12, with building out systems of support, and deliver broad-based professional development and coaching. I'm pleased to announce that just last week we announced Literacy Launch Institutes, a free 4-day differentiated, and if I can humbly say so, robust early literacy professional development for teachers serving students in pre-K through grade 3. We're really excited about this opportunity, and if folks are interested, they can go to mass.gov/literacy launch to learn more. Finally, last week we hosted our annual STEM Summit. This is the annual convening of STEM Council members and other stakeholders. Recall that the STEM Council's mission is to create STEM awareness and create concrete pipelines to high-demand STEM careers in Massachusetts. This year, and you've heard this from me before, the theme was STEM Starts Now, and that theme is intentionally designed to underscore that there are multiple entry points for STEM learning and opportunity, including engaging our youngest learners. I want to just quickly shout out Commissioner Kershaw for her regular attendance at STEM Council meetings, including last week's summit. STEM truly does start now, and the engagement of the early education community is praiseworthy. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Before I hand it over to the Commissioner, I do want to acknowledge Board Member Jennifer James Price, who has joined us remotely. Commissioner.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We have been thrilled to be part of the STEM Advisory Council and start lifting up the importance of how our STEM education starts in our early education settings and see it across the state every day. So also doubling down on our thanks for our early educators and our out-of-school time providers during Teacher Appreciation Week and Educator Provider Appreciation Day, where I got to be with 190 family child care providers in the southeast of the state, which was an incredibly inspiring, it was a conclusion of a year-long professional development effort that brought together educators from across the southeast, and it was really uplifting, and raised my hat to all of them, and it was the perfect place to be during Provider Appreciation Day. I also recently got to join Secretary Lauren Jones from Labor and Workforce Development and Lieutenant Governor to celebrate 250 years of apprenticeship programs in the Commonwealth. And of particular note, I got to spend some time with the apprentices and the apprenticeship program directors from the community group, because early education is the fastest growing sector of the registered apprenticeship programs in the Commonwealth. And so we were very happy to be represented there, and for our partnership across state government and with our colleagues in labor and workforce development, and to the amazing team at EEC who has been working on making sure those apprenticeships work for early educators in a very specific way. Also really happy at EEC to be celebrating, and as a working mom in particular, and remembering those days of sweating it out on the T to pick up my kids from early education and out of school time. Really grateful for the recognition in Massachusetts and among our employers of the importance of employers taking care of working moms and recognizing how important they are to the economy and to the workforce. So we're happy to see that as well. I did want to update the board on a couple key operational things happening at the agency. We are going to hear in a couple minutes about the FY26 budget, so what it looks like for next year and what the various proposals are. But we are here at the end of FY25, and I did want to let the board members know that we are serving more children than we ever have in our child care financial assistance program, as you all are aware. And we have been tracking very closely and working closely with the legislature and the administration and finance on making sure that we can close out this fiscal year in the black. The governor did file a supplemental budget in order to ensure that we had enough funding to support our caseload expenditures through the end of the fiscal year. We are hopeful that the legislature will take action on that supplemental budget as we round out the fiscal year here. We are able to make all of our payments for this fiscal year through the end of May, but we'll anticipate without action on that supplemental budget that payments for June to our providers of child care financial assistance would be delayed until the new fiscal year or until the supplemental budget passes. So we've begun communication. Again, we are very hopeful that action is taken in time for us to pay those bills and there will be no need for delays. But we have started communication to ensure that providers are aware that there could potentially be a delay in June so that they can plan accordingly. And I wanted to inform the board of that as well. Speaking of delays, we know that there are many people who are anxiously awaiting application for the Early Educator Scholarship Program, which we have done a lot of work over the last several years to make more accessible. We are working closely with the Department of Higher Education, and there are some IT barriers in the way right now of getting that scholarship program posted, so we are delayed in getting the application up. When it gets up, which we anticipate happening soon, we will make sure with the board and Department of Higher Education that the full time is allotted. So we anticipate extending the availability of that scholarship through December, so that application will be up for the same length of time. Sorry for our colleagues and friends who are waiting to apply for that. We do have an information session scheduled this night. I think we have tonight. You can find that more information about that on our website. And I think we have 300 people registered for that information session. So we are really proud of the work we've been doing to get the word out about that scholarship and make sure as many people who are eligible are able to access it. And we apologize for the inconvenience of the delay and anticipate that being addressed shortly. Yesterday, I was very excited to be in Somerville for the kickoff of our Universal Pre-K roadshow. Key element of the Governor's Gateway to Pre-K agenda is our Commonwealth Preschool Partnership initiative as our method and mechanism for achieving more universally accessible early education across the state. Somerville has an amazing program, and we were welcomed by, I think, 50 educators and leaders across the city, including the superintendent and representatives from the city. That is a city that is showing up for early education, and we were thrilled to be able to be there to launch this sort of statewide set of visits. We're going to be talking about CPPI today, and our next visit will be in Northampton, another star of our CPPI program. You may hear a little bit about that later today as well. So welcome any board members to join us on that roadshow, and we're looking forward to talking a little bit about the CPPI program in general and also what our plans are in FY26. I want to conclude with just a few key personnel updates. I missed you all at last month's meeting, so I didn't get to introduce, he's not here, but he's probably watching from Springfield, our new Director of Residential and Placement Services, Tim Keene, who's been with the agency a long time as a supervisor. This is a brand new position in the agency and intended to elevate the leadership around our residential and placement services, and we look forward to talking more about that next month, but we're grateful to Tim for taking on this leadership role. Julia Buchek is here, who is our new Director of Policy, and we have been almost a year without my Director of Policy, and Julia's been with us for a couple years in a few different roles, and we are so fortunate that you're joining us as Director of Policy to help us make sure that we are cataloging and communicating all of the various policy changes. So Julia, welcome, and we are thrilled to have you joining us full time. And also in absentia, not here, but I'm really pleased to introduce EEC's first ever Director of Training. We have a lot of staff and we have a lot of needs in the agency, and we have been working for several years to hire a new training director, and Bernadette Estacio started with us last week, and we look forward to introducing her to you. And also, I think she's like the most anticipated job in all of the agency. So big job, small division right now, so we look forward to it. So that concludes my updates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent, Commissioner. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to move to the public comment portion of the meeting. I'd like to call up Laura Fragamini and Suzanne Stillinger. We would like to ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. I want to acknowledge that the board has also received public comment by email and has been distributed to the board prior to the start of the meeting. I will acknowledge, as Laura and Suzanne sit down here, that I think almost all of the public comment that we received was in support of your leadership and the work that you do with the Northampton CPPI program. So we don't often comment on the testimony that we get, but it is so reflective, I think, of your leadership and the commissioner's comments that I thought it was important to know that you've got a community in our email box that's supporting the work that you guys are doing. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We were given a tip we could each have almost 3 minutes, so we're going to go for it.
Sounds good.
So Laura Fragamini, Northampton. There are so many benefits to the CPPI work, but today I'm just going to comment on the workforce supports. Back in 2019, I quit. I gave 6 months' notice to the board of where I worked in Northampton as the EEC director. I couldn't take it anymore. I started in early education and care license programs as an assistant in Hingham, Massachusetts at 17, but after 35 years, I couldn't take it anymore. I'd enroll children, but we couldn't keep them as we didn't have the support for those who learned or behaved outside of our capacity. We worked to enroll racially and ethnically diverse families, but we didn't have the coaching to make our program truly welcoming, so they declined to re-enroll. I'd quit, and I considered job offers in other fields of work. Then the posting to coordinate a new way forward for Northampton preschools came out. I didn't apply to it for at least a week because it's a big lift. It is a lot of work to restructure systems. And would it work? Could it solve the problems that drove me to quit? Yes. Yes, a resounding yes, it can. The combination of coaching and special education direct services and special education consultation for EEC teachers are making an enormous difference in expanding EEC programs' capacity to teach all children and welcome all families. Our directors say the old way of removing children with disabilities to the public school for a few hours a day did function as respite from challenges teachers weren't supported to manage. Itinerant special education services on site and the coaching, though, have expanded their teachers' capacity to lead truly inclusive classrooms. It's also brought joy back to the experience of teaching in teams for all children's benefit. We're a few years in and we're seeing the data come through. Instructional practice scores of EEC teachers in Northampton are nudging past state and national averages. Indicator 7 data on the pace at which children make gains to close the gap with peers of the same age are showing similar growth. There are still challenges to navigate, and I don't have time to unpack them all, but please know this, it's working and it's supporting EEC workforce and the children at the center of what we do.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Hello, thank you to the members of the committee and to everyone who showed up to the hearing today. My name is Suzanne Stillinger. I am a teacher and accessibility advocate at New Village, which is a nonprofit collective of family childcare sites located in a small neighborhood in the city of Northampton. I also am a senior policy fellow at Teach Plus Massachusetts, a senior writing fellow at Teach Plus. There's a few other credentials I'm going to skip so that I can get to the important parts here.
I heard about your commute here, so we're going to give a little flexibility. Suzanne has had quite a ride here from Northampton
Yes,
today,
look
and
out
you
for
persisted. So
Route 2 in Concord, there's some screws in the road.
Yeah.
But I got here. Thank you to the red line.
Yeah.
So I'm not here to talk about any of the big policy advocacy work I do. I'm here actually to talk about my day-to-day and the ways that CPPI has changed my day-to-day work. Yesterday, I was in the garden space with my students. I was pouring broom corn seeds into their hands, and we were practicing making a bowl so the seeds didn't spill over the side or go down the middle. And broom corn is really fun to grow with the kids because it is dramatic. It grows quickly. In a little while, it's going to be taller than all the kids. By the fall, it's going to be taller than me. And it's an interesting plant because by the time it's as tall as me, it has sent out extra roots. Those extra roots help anchor it into the ground and help it weather whatever comes its way. I didn't drive and tea all the way out here to teach you about broom corn, but I want to talk about those roots. I've been teaching for many decades, and I've only been a CPPI classroom teacher for a few years, a fraction of that time, and what a huge difference it has made in my practice, in my expanded capacity, in the experiences of my students and my families. I want to share some quick examples because I can't cover it all. Laura came to chat with me, dropped into the classroom to talk about some budget things. And I mentioned over the winter, we're seeing an increase in hunger in our school community. I think we need to bring back snack. We haven't done that since COVID. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm in the classroom 8 to 5. I don't have admin time. We didn't budget for it. I can't raise tuition. Within 24 hours, Laura had connected me to other community organizations. And now we work with those organizations to buy our food at cost from the co-op. Local farms donated large CSA shares to us, and we are feeding our kids free morning and afternoon snack at no cost to families. That would not have happened without CPPI and the connections that it has helped us make. I'd like to share also about a student. I'll call him T. He missed the kindergarten cutoff by 4 days, and he is especially precocious at math. I had wonderful teacher training from Greenfield Community College and Smith College, but I was not equipped to teach this kid the kind of math that meet him right at his learning edge. Through instructional coaching, through CPPI, we had a math specialist who has taught me and my co-teacher how to meet this kid where he is. So instead of wasting his last year of preschool just treading water, we met him where he's at, and he is going to hit kindergarten running in math and in literacy. That would not have been possible without CPPI. The itinerant services, the speech specialists who do itinerant speech therapy in the classroom, I mean, those children are getting therapy in an environment where they feel safe and known and understood. That makes a big difference, and they're not missing hours of school time. And our whole classroom community is seeing that we all have different learning needs, and they all deserve to be met. In real time, we're modeling that. I want to close. I'm going to leave off some things I wanted to say, but I'll submit some written testimony if you're still taking it. I have connected with colleagues in the area around issues that come up in our center. that I had never met before, that I met through CPPI gatherings that Laura has put together. So when I'm facing a problem I've never faced before, I don't have to reinvent the wheel, and neither do my colleagues down the street at a center or at Head Start. We can call each other because we know each other's work now. We know our experiences, where we have expertise, and those connections did not exist before CPPI brought us together. The growth in my practice, those connections, those services, the supports and connections, those roots are all because of CPPI. I want to thank the board for your continuing support for this vital initiative. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Laura. Next, I want to call up Will Lair. Will? Welcome, Will.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Kershaw, Chair Belicito, and the esteemed members of the EEC Board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony today. My name is Will Lair, and I'm the Director of Policy at the United Way of Massachusetts Bay. As you may know, United Way of Massachusetts Bay has supported the Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative over the past several years as both an advocate and on the ground in CPPI communities. I'm here to testify on the important impacts of CPPI and why it should remain a high priority for the board and for EEC. Nothing you'll hear in my testimony today should come as a surprise, but it is worth highlighting the impact so we can reiterate the importance here. CPPI provides critical funding to build and strengthen partnerships between public school districts, community-based organizations to create high-quality preschool opportunities that meet the needs of children and family. This builds infrastructure, generates shared goals for community-wide kindergarten readiness strategies, and increases the focus on equity across preschool settings and community. The preschool landscape is particularly overwhelming as parents and caregivers begin preschool knowing that a major goal of the year is to exit prepared for kindergarten. Many communities have not yet built community-wide infrastructure surrounding preschool and the transition to kindergarten, especially for families who are new to the United States or are ESL, English as a second language. I always forget the acronym. This means more work for families as they try to find an education setting that meets their child's learning needs. United Way of Mass Bay and United Ways across the state have worked closely with the EEC and with communities as they launch and advance their CPPI work. We closely supported communities as they pulled together school districts, Head Start programs, community-based preschool classrooms, Montessori preschools, family childcare, CFCE, grantees, early intervention programs, and more. The CPPI leadership team that each community builds as part of the grant brings the partners together to complete a detailed planning process. To highlight some of the impact, I want to pull from Salem's experience with CPPI. One of our 12 focus communities, families there have reported that the reduction of tuition that the grant provides has allowed them to enroll their children in extra activities such as swimming and gymnastics that they wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. CPPI funding has also supported school and family visits, to places like the zoo and museums that are critical for nurturing the natural curiosity of children, setting them up for a lifetime of learning. A parent has also provided the following testimony related to the itinerant services that CPPI provides. The funding from the CPPI grant helped to make social-emotional support available to my son in the form of behavioral specialists from the public school who worked with him to develop strategies that he has carried with him into kindergarten. The CPPI teams are building a foundation for their communities, building a bridge from birth to 5 education to K-12 education. They are creating an education system that centers the experience of children and family in their communities. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I urge the board and EEC to keep CPPI as a priority to support equitable preschool access across the state. We at United Way will continue to advocate and organize for increased funding from the legislature. With continued support and growth, though, CPPI can be a key piece in strengthening our educational system. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Will. Anyone else here for public comment? All right. Moving on, we have before us the minutes of the April 9th, 2025 board meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or edits to the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And the minutes of the April 9th meeting are approved. Now I'd like to turn it over to the Commissioner to tee up our first agenda item.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our public comment participants today. I want to invite Eric Hansen up, who's our Chief Financial Officer and also our Acting Chief Operating Officer, and Crystal Lanton, who's our Budget Director. We are going to give you a preview of the FY26 budget. So I talked a little bit about us trying to finish the year where we need to be, but we are also looking into next fiscal year. So we are in the midst of the budget process. The governor filed her budget. The Senate has completed their version, the House has completed their version, and the Senate is close to finishing their version, and have asked Eric and Crystal to kind of update the board on where we are. In terms of the three versions, there are some variations across them, including in funding available for our CPPI program, as well as a number of other key areas that we're watching and that have been priorities for the board. So I'll ask them to kind of walk through. There are a couple of, it's sort of a complicated year, but not quite as complicated as last year. So all of you might remember there was 26 outside sections in the budget last year, 14 new reporting requirements for the agency, and some really complicated line items. So so having said that, it's going to seem pretty complicated, but if you'll recall, not quite as much as last year. So Eric and Crystal, I'll turn it over to you, and then
Thank you.
reserve the right to jump in.
All right, of course. Chairs, members of the board, secretary, and commissioner, thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about the FY26 state budget process for early education and care. We'll start, as you may recall from our board meeting in February, the budget process for the next fiscal year kicks off with the governor filing her budget recommendation at the end of January. This is what we reviewed in February. It's called the governor's proposal, or more commonly, House 1. This is the start of the budget process for the coming year, and the House takes the governor's proposal as its starting point to develop its own version of the budget. That, as Commissioner mentioned, was released in April. We are in May, and the Senate is undergoing its own process to develop a budget. Senate Ways and Means has come out, and the Senate will be debating its final version of the budget, I believe, next week. So as we're in May, we're eagerly awaiting the Senate's budget, but we'll spend most of our time here talking about House 1 the House final budget and how it compares to the governor's recommendation. So there are a number of places where the House final budget aligns with the governor's proposal. And there are also areas of significant difference. So the areas where the budget is aligned are in the left-hand side of this slide. And importantly, the House final strongly supports the governor's recommendation on Commonwealth Cares for Children, or the C3 program, at $475 million. This is an important program that helps support our child care providers' operational costs, including supporting the workforce. House final also includes $20 million for child care resource and referral agencies, or CCR&Rs, which connect families with child care providers. And there's $18.5 million mirroring the House 1 proposal for Head Start, which is especially important at this time. Other programs that support that the House final budget supports are early educators' professional growth, such as career pathways, as well as early literacy initiatives and other initiatives at Parent Child Plus and for Reach Out and Read. In the center column here, we have some areas of difference between the governor's budget and the House final budget. Notably, there's in EEC's administrative line item, there's a $7.5 million earmark for higher education scholarships. This is something we've seen this year. There is a decrease from what the governor filed for CPPI funding. The governor filed in her budget $17.7 million for this program, which the House funded at $10 million. The House final budget also reduces caseload funding by approximately $30 million. So the agency continues to watch these areas through the budget development process. We're paying attention to that reduction to our admin line item, or excuse me, a $2 million reduction to our admin line item, which could have operational impacts for the agency in completing its goals for the coming year. The CPPI funding at $10 million is a significant watch area for us as we go through the budget process, because at this funding level, it would make it a bit difficult to sustain current grants at the FY25 level, and eliminates the possibility of eliminates the possibility of issuing new planning grants to communities. And finally, the $30 million reduction to caseload would complicate the agency's ability to reopen access to new voucher placements. And while there is in the House final budget $15 million allocated for waitlist remediation, the language in the budget restricts this funding to contracted seats.
I'm just going to reiterate those watch areas for us, and we'll take a look at in a minute at where Senate Ways and Means are, because many of these things will end up in a conference committee between the House and the Senate. Yep. So of particular concern, the reduction in our administrative line item. You know, we've been working across policy and programmatic priority areas, but also to build the capacity of the agency to do new and different things, whether it's expanding access to our scholarship programs or a brand new research agenda to drive a data-driven decision-making, a whole family access team that's been dedicated to breaking the barriers down, new staff dedicated to the unique needs of our family child care providers, and people are policy. And this level of reduction in our admin account would require a reduction in force for us, and that was obviously of extreme concern for the agency. On CPPI, obviously, we are, the governor filed, and you'll hear about it in a minute, supplemental budget with a fair share surplus that would allow us to sort of commit to expansion over a 3-year period, which is a great match for the CPPI program, because the way the program works, and you'll hear more about this later, planning, early implementation, fuller implementation, full implementation. So a multi-year sort of investment in growth in that program is a terrific match for how we want to support communities to grow. So the House Ways and Means, the House final budget would mean a reduction in our existing actual grantees. Similar on in the caseload account, the reduction there would represent not fully funding the kids we are already currently serving. So complicated for the overall caseload accounts to be underfunded by what we project as about 30 million, and then also have a separate line item that creates an expectation to serve additional new kids. So that's definitely a watch area and something we've been working closely with the Senate on, and that we will continue to talk about during the conference.
That's right. I'll also note there were 2 outside sections in the House budget, which have some dynamic implications for some of the programs. For C3, there was an increase by about 0.25 percentage point in what is available to privately funded programs. And there's also a requirement in an outside section that would commit the agency to, to go back to its previous contracts, version of its contractual obligations prior to the re-procurement in October, and would allow will allow programs to keep up to 20% of surplus funding from their contracts. Again, this is a watch area for us. We're still doing some analysis on the fiscal side to assess impacts and what that would mean for programs, providers, and our funding. So more to come on that.
I'll step in on this one too, and just say that we, the new contracts represented a huge amount of forward motion and professionalization for our field in a way that I think we appreciated, and those who bid on the contracts appreciated. Were there some things that people loved and some things that are growth and challenge? Yes. And, the structure we put in those new contracts was really about sort of transparency and understanding what the true costs are of delivering those services, so that as the contracts evolve over time, we would be able to put our budgets into the right places. So this is a growth experience, I think, for us as an agency and also for our field. And we believe in continuing to negotiate. We don't think line item language is the right way to sort of get contract administrative technicalities worked out. We have been working actively with the providers so that we can make sure that, we always told you all the way along in our procurement that we were going to get some things right and we were going to get some things wrong, and that we'd be committed to continuous improvement, and we are. So what's represented here is sort of concerns about how reserves work and flexibility in contracts, and we are 100% with our providers on this. We just want to work it out at the contract level, not through line items. So this is an area of concern, and there is a similar amendment filed in the Senate, so it's something that we're keeping an eye on as well. We don't want to go backwards. We want to go forwards with the contract.
Well put. So these next few slides are a table of comparison among the different budget versions, different versions of the budget that are public already. So we have, won't go over this line by line, but you can see that there's Senate Ways and Means is also there to the far right. Our initial analysis is that Senate Ways and Means budget more closely matches the House One proposal. That could change in the coming week as amendments come. I'm sure there will be small differences, but it is a difference too with the House final budget. So we expect many of our line items to wind up in conference, and we'll be eagerly awaiting how things move forward with that in the general court.
Probably just note that the CPPI program.
CPPI,
Go back,
yes.
if you go back to the previous slide, just to point out some of the watch areas, Senate Ways and Means did make our admin account whole in terms of meeting House One, but it reduced our quality account, which is actually where our licensing staff are paid from. So even though our admin, or the 1,000 line item, is back up at 8 million, the reduction in the quality improvement could also have an impact on staffing and our force. Really grateful for the support for CPPI at 27 million in this proposal. And the Senate Ways and Means proposal does match the governor's proposal for caseload, which does match our projection of being able to retain services for all the children that are currently enrolled in the program. Would not allow us to reopen access at current projections, but would make sure that we were fully funded for the kids that we are already serving and are projected to serve through increases in DTA and DCF caseloads. Sorry.
That's all right. This next table is how the fair share line items and kind of are laid out across these budgets.
So fortunately for EEC and for education and transportation agencies, the so-called millionaire's tax, or the fair share revenues, are available to support many of the governor's priorities and the legislature's priorities around education, including early education. So what's confusing is that you can see some things are funded through general fund or other sources, and then some things are funded through fair share. So when you add them up is where you start to see the full. So you can see, for example, CPPI was funded through, in the Senate Ways and Means, at 10 million, and then in the line item, the additional funding of 17.7. So it's amazing that we have this source of funds to support education, and just explaining why you see it on two different pages, and that's hard to sort of add up all the numbers. But once all the budgets are final, we'll present it to you in both ways. Source of funds and then total for each program.
To add to what Commissioner's statement, she's exactly right. Having it kind of split between these two funds, both in the GA, what will become the GAA, as well as fair share, does complicate things, especially as we move to the next slide. You'll see, both Governor and House and Senate have published, have acted on a fair share supplemental budget for FY25. We're going to focus here on what the governor filed and what the House filed, because the Senate's bill, while it didn't include funding for early education and care, they split it with their budget for the GAA. So that funding is there, it's just in a different vehicle.
So the millionaire's tax had a surplus, so greater than expected revenue was taken in as a result of that. And so this whole supplemental budget is funded by surplus created from that fair share amendment or so-called millionaire's tax. And so with that essentially one-time set of revenue, the governor and the House and the Senate have all weighed in on how they would like to see this surplus funding be spent.
That's 100% of this?
This is
Yep.
100% surplus from the fair share amendment that each of the governor and the House and the Senate have put their fingerprints on how they would like to see it spent. And you can see the governor, 150 million for EEC, including 50 million over 3 years for our CPPI program, and then 100 million in sort of flexible funds that would allow us to continue the work we've been doing around capacity building and workforce development, potentially around access and affordability. So continuing to recognize that we're a system in growth and transition and supporting some of our critical key priorities, and also allowing opportunity for support for the recommendations coming out of the Early Education and Care Task Force. And then you can see that House funded a number of other things. I'll turn it back to Eric.
Sure.
And
The
Senate
House-
took a different approach.
Yep, yes. So the House supplemental did take a bit of a different turn. There's a number of millions of dollars in it that touch on different things. 20 million for capacity building, as Commissioner mentioned, so a portion of what the governor's version has been filed for. House version also included 20 million for CCFA rate increases beginning in FY26. So another caveat to keep in mind as we talk about the FY25 fair share supplemental bill, it has impacts in next year, so FY26. There are also $7.5 million for loan repayment, another program that we have continually here, and $3.8 million for local childcare and out-of-school time programs. The Senate had a bit less for EEC in this version of its budget, namely $2.6 million for local childcare and out-of-school time programs. But many of the governor's initiatives were carried in the Senate Ways and Means budget through something called a fund split, where essentially they put it not on the general fund, but the fair share.
So what you see is the governor, the House, and the Senate will put out their sort of general fund budget. So here are our line items. Here's what we're going to give EEC. And then there's the fair share part of that, the ongoing revenue that is agreed on that's coming out, and that's funding sort of that picture for 26. And then this year we also have this additional third piece, which is the supplemental budget reflecting the surplus. So it is the combination of those three things that at the end of the full set of negotiations, we'll know where the dollars land for each of the priorities and the programs that we have.
So hopeful watching going forward into July. We'll stay abreast of all the changes. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions on the budget?
Just one quick one. Is there any consideration given to state stabilization fund in these conversations, drawing from that potentially for any reason, or is that not necessary given the surplus in the supplemental? Or the fair share, rather?
The conversation, I mean, Eric might be able, from his previous hats, to be able to answer this question too, but the sort of rainy day and stabilization fund, like that happens at a broader discussion about sort of the whole revenue picture for the Commonwealth. But as they decide what their priorities are, both the House and the Senate and the governor, for early education, for transportation, for health and human services, they're also thinking about stabilization funds and surplus in the bigger picture. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The administration, along with its partners in the legislature, continue to watch as revenues come in generally across the state, both tax and non-tax revenues, as we go into 26, and they'll be mindful of that. I'm confident in how it jives with
Got it.
the stabilization fund.
Thanks.
I mean, it's probably important to note, tax receipts over the last couple months have been lower than sort of revenue projections. The governor, many of you may have seen, announced a hiring freeze effective within 10 days. So really projecting out sort of a contracted budget. I think there's a lot of uncertainty being created from the federal level, not just uncertainty, but actually reductions across many of our partner agencies, inside and outside of government, creating a level of sort of contraction and worry, and certainly we'll see some of that reflected in the final state budget, we would anticipate.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Crystal, for your, not just the presentation, but the work that goes into both analyzing and advocating and understanding what's happening is being done. But we are very, very fortunate to have these two and the teams that are behind them doing this work. Okay. We are going to turn to our Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative, and we had an opportunity, I think it was last February, to talk a little bit about the CPPI program. We were in Salem. We had a nice panel of presenters who talked about the program in Salem. As I said, this is a key element of the Governor's Gateway to Pre-K agenda. It is a huge priority for the agency. As we are out there learning about it in our roadshow, we thought it was another opportunity for us to share with you kind of the overall CPPI, kind of remind everyone what's happening. But it is also what we call a competitive grant year for the CPPI program, which means it's an opportunity for us to take a look at the program and make some changes. This team and our colleagues across the state have really been, as we recognize this program as the state's strategy for expanding universally accessible preschool, we have an opportunity to kind of look at this program and begin to create sort of greater consistencies and expectations across communities. And so we have been committed to a continuous learning process and to incorporating those learnings and successes from our friends in Northampton to our friends in Somerville and our friends in Salem and other places across the state. So we wanted to give you a quick kind of reminder and overview of what the program looks like, and then share some of the key changes that we're thinking about for 26 as we enter into this new grant cycle. So Jocelyn, I will turn it over to you, who has been the brain behind the CPPI program. We're so fortunate to have you and your team here to help present on this program and the work behind it.
Thank you very much, Commissioner and members of the board. I'm pleased to be here talking about CPPI again, and just reiterating what the Commissioner already said. This re-procurement, we'll talk about what that actually means, has been an opportunity for the team to really reflect on experiences over the last almost 10 years of doing this work, and thinking about where have really the strongest practices been in place, what have we learned from what communities have tried over the years, and how can we pull that together and provide greater guidance and support for all the communities working through the grant. So that is what we're going to talk about today. But first, I just wanted to introduce the team. Kathy Lang has been with CPPI, well, actually, CPPI and the prior program, PEG, since the beginning. Amy Smisoli is here. I think you've met her before, but as our excellent social emotional focus partner in special education as well. Sakeli Braithwaite Hall cannot be here today, but she is also a newer partner on the grant and has been working in partnership with Kathy now and managing the grantees directly. And then Kyle Sweeney, who is been leading the team. So glad to have everybody here to talk to you about this. And I'm going to jump in. So many of you were here last year when we talked about the grant, but some of you were not. Just as a sort of general reminder, CPPI is funding that really is designed to support the infrastructure building and the creation of the connective tissue that is essential if you want to work as a community to build a collaborative effort across the mixed delivery system to plan around expanded access to high quality preschool. And so the grant is structured around both building that infrastructure and building that collaboration, and also thinking very carefully and intentionally about what it takes to ensure children have access to high quality preschool and how to support the community in working together in creating that. You can see that collaboration is a very important part of this work, and at the heart of the collaboration is a leadership team that is made up of participants, and we'll talk a little bit more about the details of it soon, from across the mixed delivery system, really working together to think about the needs of the communities, the priorities within the community, and how to use all the resources that every partner brings to the table to create a plan and then implement a plan that makes that happen. As part of doing this work, we as an agency have identified 3 priorities in particular that sort of represent the work streams that are essential to touch on to do this work. The first is thinking very intentionally about the expansion of access to affordable and quality preschool. And this involves both understanding where the gaps in access are locally, thinking about what the barriers are to access, and thinking about the community's overall goals for expansion and funding. Alignment of high-quality curriculum and supports across the mixed delivery system is another important part of this. Sometimes this does look like a community-wide commitment to a curriculum with a lot of strong support for the implementation and consistency of implementation across the community. But at its heart, it really is about a community coming together, sharing shared goals for children, and thinking about the ways in which practices can be made supported in meeting those goals, and thinking about the ways in which practices, both across all the partners serving preschool children, are aligned and working together in support of those goals, but also the alignment to what's happening when kids enter kindergarten and where they're going in elementary school. And then finally, the last priority is equitable access to special education and inclusion. And this is one that really came from our grantees as we were in the early days of CPPI implementation. There were many, many grantees that came to the table because they were concerned about the access that children had, particularly those in the private programs to special education services. They wanted to do better by children, and this provided an opportunity to invest funding into thinking about how to work across the mixed delivery system. The sort of modal solution in this priority is providing an itinerant team of special education supports to children in private preschool programs. But as the team will get into the details of, there's a lot of capacity building work and communication that goes along with doing that well as well.
I just want to, and maybe it's coming from being in Somerville, but also thinking a lot about this program and sort of the why and the theory of change we have, which is that we have this incredible, rich, and diverse mixed delivery system where families are already choosing to place their children in a family child care home or in a Montessori program or in a Reggio Emilio inspired or something that works for their life and their children. And our idea is that early childhood education should be an experience, not a setting. And that CPPI's approach is to say, let's have that experience that children are having, driven by the choice that parents are making, be what it needs to be to prepare all children to be successful in school. And so by layering on sort of CPPI and creating these structures in the community, you have a whole community committed to sort of making sure that the quality of the experience is consistent. And so when kids are entering school, they've had that early childhood education that the whole community decides is the right approach in order to prepare them for school success and for the educators who are going to be receiving them in kindergarten. And, you know, what we've heard a lot from the communities, and you heard a little bit of it today, is that it is lifting our educators. It is reducing isolation among our providers and creating sort of each part of the system can do what it does best. And CPPI alone cannot get to, at the current funding levels, is not going to get to universal access to preschool. But in a lot of the communities, what you'll see is a layering of CPPI funding with C3 funding, with some special education funding, with some funding sometimes from the city, sometimes from the district. And so we are continuing sort of this growth, but the theory of change is to build within that rich mixed delivery system and create an experience that is equitable, both educationally, but also from an access perspective for a family. So they have a child who has a special education need, but they also work full-time. They can't take 2 hours off during the day to take their kid over to the school to get special education services or speech and language. So we want to take it to them. And this team has been leading that work.
Thank you. Jumping in a little bit and briefly to the details and mechanics of this, the CPPI grant is a grant that does go to the district or the city, the municipality, and then sub-grant out to community-based providers that are working in partnership. And the process by which this happens, the district gets the funds. Again, the leadership team is meant to be put into place at that point. And that is the group that thinks about what is the plan. The plan is what is being enacted with the funding, and decisions about how to go forward and implement and distribute funding are made at that level. And then the sub-granting process happens. And a key role in all of this, and we'll talk about this more, is there is a grant coordinator. There is somebody whose job it is to navigate all of these systems to manage the collaboration, to lead the leadership teams, and make sure that this work is happening across the district. And I will say, I mean, you referred to the visit to Somerville. I will just say that, you know, that was one piece that stood out, is how intentional the focus on that part of the work was in Somerville in terms of making sure that the collaboration and the communication was done thoughtfully, and all the work follows from that. It is at the heart of what's happening with CPPI. This is just very briefly to give you a sense of how the grant has gone. So originally there was a federal preschool expansion grant that went to 5 communities, and that was sort of the beginning of the process of developing this grant. From that, we built out planning opportunities for other communities that were not involved, and then a series of opportunities for those who had had planning grants to come in and apply for implementation. So you can see that it's sort of, the numbers grew in steps over time. We went up to 9 in 2019, and then more recently have gone up to our current number of 30 grantees through a combination, again, of planning and implementation grants. As we look ahead to FY26, we have, again, reflected on what we've learned. We thought very carefully about how to map out the structures and the expectations and the stages of implementation that are how one has success in this grant. And that will be all mapped out in a scope that we'll put out. But we're also committed to sort of 2 pieces of what we're doing. We want to support and sustain the work that has been happening to date and continue to fund that work. That's the first part of a phased approach that we're going to take to implement the grant in the coming year. And then as funding is available, which obviously is sort of pending the final budget decisions we discussed early, then we can think about opportunities for expansion and for new planning opportunities for new communities to come in. But one thing that we are building into the structure of the grant is recognizing it takes time and ongoing long-term investment to make this happen. We're looking at a 7-year grant cycle. So there'll be a 3-year initial grant cycle, which is new. We've always had renewals every year. There'll be a 3-year initial grant period and then 2 2-year renewal cycles. So it provides a good long runway for our investment and commitment, and for communities' investment and commitment to work on and grow this program over time. And then we've been thinking about not just identifying the steps that need to be taken for success, but also the phases of implementation, because we do, again, recognize it takes time and you cannot do everything all at once. And there's been a lot learned about what has to happen first before you can move to the next step. And so the team has really mapped that out, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. As I keep saying, the leadership is essential in this. One thing that we wanted to really call out and clarify for everybody involved in the grant are the leadership structures that are needed. The current grantees are doing all of these things, but these functions are not necessarily clearly defined right now. But there really are 2 leadership roles and groups, overlapping groups of people that are essential in the community to make this work. The first is the strategic leadership team, and this is the group that usually comes together when a community has a planning grant. It includes representation from the district and from stakeholders across the community, including private early childhood programs, but also other types of stakeholders. Community colleges can participate, the CFCE often participates, other entities working closely in the early childhood world or the family support world might participate. And this is a group that during the planning phase manages the needs assessment, manages the strategic planning process, and really works together to think about what's the plan and the goals for the community. But once the grant moves to implementation, you need the operational management team to really focus on the day-to-day implementation. These are the people who are actually getting grant funds. These are the ones running the implementation, running the classrooms, and they need to come together regularly to just maintain and manage the coordination that has to happen and be effective. But we still need the strategic leadership team paying attention to what's happening, thinking about what the metrics are that need to be tracked over time, looking to see, is it going in the direction and is it intended? Are there adjustments that needed? Where is the future? Where are we going in the future? So continuing to focus attention to these 2 functions and support grantees in thinking about how to make sure that both are being met throughout implementation.
It's probably important for us to just recognize too. So we've lifted up Somerville and Northampton, who are often contacted by colleagues from across the state to share their special sauce that they have going in their communities. But this work is really hard, and we
Yeah.
hear that a lot. And we hear it from the districts, and we hear it from the superintendents, and we hear it from the community-based providers. And part of this leadership strategy and change is to make sure that the attention to the strategy at the beginning is there and ongoing, braided funding, including all folks at the table, but that operationally we're also paying attention to it. So, we've had some other communities that need additional technical assistance and help for us to make sure that the partnerships and the collaboration and sort of the promise of what CPPI can do can be achieved over time. So part of the changes in the grant leadership team are intended to recognize that we're not all Somerville and Northampton yet, but we have that goal for our communities.
The other thing that we've been doing broadly across all our work in EEC is thinking about the ways in which the different projects that we're working on are aligned across each other. I think many here are familiar with the work on the new subsidy contract, and we've also been thinking a lot about, as part of that contract work, what the expectations are for a program to create the foundation that you need to build on to build quality. And the roles and responsibilities that are essential to have at a program level to make sure that that work can be done. So as we look forward in CPPI, we are also realizing that for programs engaging with CPPI, that infrastructure is needed as well. So it's really important to recognize the roles, and in some smaller programs, this could be one person serving multiple roles, and in other larger programs, it might be multiple people. But you need somebody leading the work at the program level. So within a CBO program, somebody who's coordinating with the grant coordinator and making sure the work is happening successfully at the site level. But you also need an educational leadership at the program site level to engage with the supports coming from the district, to engage in the professional learning planning that is really central to the quality component of the grant. And you need the family engagement coordination, because family engagement, outreach in the community, you'll hear more about that, but all of those are essential pieces of the grant too. And when the program infrastructure can rise up and meet the broader infrastructure of the grant, it is much more effective in doing the work. So that's something else that we're introducing that we haven't really called out. I mean, again, I will say that the programs that we work with generally have these functions in place because they are needed to do the work, but calling out the importance of it and aligning that with some of the expectations that we have and other work that we're doing around quality. I'm going to turn it over to Kyla to introduce some of the thinking that has been done.
Thanks. As Jocelyn noted, our team spent a lot of time thinking about this. We started planning this last summer, where we delved into our own experience with working with the grantees, and then we met with a number of grantees across the state who were doing this work, and what was the best practices, and what do they need to move through and create a quality grant program in their community. And so we came up with these different levels of implementation. We're going to go through the different levels of implementation, talk about each priority area through that. And I just want to give a little shout out to our teammate, Jay Swanson, for creating the tree motif for these as we go on. He wasn't able to be here today, but he's an essential part of our team. So we start with this planning stage, and this is our competitive grant opportunity where we welcome new communities into the grant. And it's appropriate for districts that are interested in the CPPI model but have not yet received a grant. And during this time, they're working on building partnerships with local programs, EEC licensed community-based organizations. They're developing a strategic leadership team, as Jocelyn talked about, and they're conducting needs assessment, drafting a strategic action plan, and initiating early implementation of CPPI programming. Currently, we have 8 planning grants that are up and running, and the team has had the opportunity to go out and visit them in the last month, or are in the process of that, and it's really exciting to see their progress. So this talks a little bit about the eligibility, that it goes to public schools. We've also added into organizations that are municipal authorities that have oversight over locally funded early education efforts. Some of our communities are delving into those partners, to those efforts, and they need to start off by identifying 2 community-based organizations in their community.
say something about
Yeah,
that?
of
Yeah,
course.
so I think that addition is also reflective of some of lessons learned that we've, from watching others do it. Really successful communities often have some engagement from the mayor's office, so that there is support that goes beyond what the district can provide, and there is a voice at the table that thinks holistically about what's happening in the community. And it can look very different district to district and community to community, but we wanted to leave the possibility for a municipality that had a different structure to at least consider the opportunity if that made the most sense for them.
Great.
So this is our early implementation stage, and I'm going to talk about the access, and the rest of the team will talk about others. This phase marks a time of transition between planning and implementation, and our expectation is grantees identify timelines that are responsive to local conditions that shape the pace in which work can be developed. So in regards to access, this includes attention to specific and significant local needs and challenges working families face in accessing affordable quality preschool and support services for their children. Grantees may use CPPI funds to hire staff, purchase materials, implement family outreach plans, identify enrollment targets, and putting into place data systems necessary to track success for CPPI classrooms to open. It also includes finalizing memorandums of agreement with their community-based partners, establishing contract for necessary comprehensive services, and the utilization of transition to a kindergarten toolkit to begin to engage transition planning with CPPI partners and other community-based organizations within their community. And that's work we've done collaboratively with our colleagues at DESE.
So for the quality stage, at the early implementation stage, we want to encourage district and CBO leaders and educators to develop a long-term plan for professional development, considering what data points need to be collected, taking stock of what curriculums are being implemented across the community, and planning for job-embedded support and coaching. We support communities by learning about the classroom assessment scoring system, an observational instrument developed to assess classroom quality through impactful adult-child interactions. Through a grant with Wellesley College, we offer free training and PLCs for reliable raters, program leaders, and educators so they have a better understanding of the tool. It's also time to draft, if necessary, a coach position to support staff with the implementation of quality programming.
Yeah, and when we think about the inclusion piece of early implementation, we're really thinking about those special education services that we want to offer to children in all of those programs, the community programs. And it's oftentimes, this is where there's a shift in mindset because it's a different way of providing special education to our students. And it really sort of challenges that mindset too, like these are my kids, those are your kids, this is all of our kids. So it's a really nice way for us to start thinking about servicing all children across the board and across communities. And as Kathy mentioned, this is a time to start looking at data points. This is where programs and communities, they're getting ready to get ready. Mm-hmm. So they need to start looking at those data points. They're thinking about what are the services that are needed for the children in our community. Do we have, are the needs of special education services through the roof? We're going to need a special education teacher that makes sure that they're part of our inclusion team. Many times we see speech and language. There's always such a need for speech and language. So we want to make sure that we have a speech and language related service provider that's part of that itinerant team. So it's really about sort of getting ready and making sure that that design and referral process that is in place feels really good to not only the public school folks that are participating, but our community folks as well. Lots of times, this is brand new to a lot of our community programs, and so they're maybe looking at an IEP for the very first time. They may be wondering, it's not an easy document to look at. And so to be able to partner with our public school folks to say, let's work together, let's have some of our professional development time, we can work together and really create a plan and a design that works for everybody so that we can start to have a seamless referral process. So that's really what the early implementation phase is really all about.
So I think you can see across these, there's a lot of planning and organizing. So you're transitioning from the planning process where there's a big idea to like, what's the nitty gritty of getting it up off the ground, and some investments and things that you need to set yourself up to launch. And now we can move into What happens when you
Going
get
to
running?
mid-implementation stage, where this is where most of our current grantees are. They've been working on this. We see this as a multi-year process of them getting, sometimes they'll start with one priority and then they'll expand into other priorities because it's a lot of work to take on at once. And this is really when they're running classrooms and developing the structures necessary to meet the grant priority at a mid-implementation level. And as far as access is concerned, we want the CPPI classrooms to be operational, meet requirements for hours of operation, which includes full day, full year services for families, and they're meeting family needs and enrollment goals. It also includes family outreach and enrollment processes. They're allocating grant funding to and other funding sources to support the implementation of tuition goals for families across the CPPI systems. And this is what the commissioner was talking about regarding different funding streams that come into play in that system. And family-focused staff are in place to support ongoing outreach and family engagement. And they're launching the comprehensive services and track utilization to ensure ongoing adjustments are necessary to meet family needs. And we're also working with grantees to include family child care programs into their service system. We've seen a number of communities start to do this. One of our superstars we'll talk about in a little bit is the community of Sandwich. And then this is also the strategic leadership team begins tracking enrollment and family access goals through the regular review of pertinent data, and necessary ongoing adjustments are identified and implemented.
So for quality, this is the stage where we start to see professional development come alive. Program leaders and educators are working together to analyze data collected and are planning intentional PD that speaks both to program and individual educator development. Coaches are now in place, and they are supporting educators with both quality and special education support and planning. There's a familiarity with the class tool, and class observations are taking place. Communities are using that data to plan coaching and training tailored to the program and educator needs. And finally, programs are shifting from identifying quality curriculum to ensuring that curriculum is implemented to fidelity, and coaching and job-embedded supports are also in place.
And when we think about the inclusion piece of mid-implementation, we have our itinerant team in place. So our itinerant team is hired, they're providing services, they're in community programs. And there's also an additional support when we think about mental and behavioral foundations for each classroom. So this is now just a natural part of how they are looking at high quality and how they're looking at best practices in programs. So because of those extra supports, because the itinerant team is coming in and those things are now pretty much embedded in those classrooms, we would really expect our community programs to start thinking about how can they avoid the use of exclusionary discipline. So these are robust programs now, right? And so they have this extra support through CPPI. They have coaches that are coming in, these experts that are coming in. And so we really want programs to start thinking about their own policies and their own thoughts about how they can really start to retain kids regardless of what sort of behaviors are showing up in the classroom.
And this is our advanced implementation stage. We have a
Say something. Sorry, I just want to set this one up because
Yep.
this created a lot of discussion on the part of the team as we've been thinking about this grant growing and growing to maturity. The advanced implementation phase really reflects our thinking forward to, if we're bringing this to scale, where does this work go? What has to happen before there's broad-based expansion within the community? And then what does it look like to do that type of work and bring this to scale? So at this point, we're really, there are aspects of this that have been done, but we're thinking a little bit beyond where we've been to date with the current CPPI communities.
We really thought of it as the ideal system that we'd like to see in place. And we do have a few grantees that are working in some areas of that. So some of our grantees may see themselves, and I might call out one or two. This means the mature outreach and enrollment systems are in place that support streamlined access for families in efficient information sharing across programs, district, and effective use of tracking. This is a single point of access, of entry for families to identify opportunities and manage enrollment. And we can call out Somerville here, who has what they call the Somerville Hub, where all families are able to come in and get information about the programs that meet their needs in the community. It also talks about planned expansion of CPPI to other programs and classrooms and funding mechanism that brings the model to scale. And we really, at this stage, would like to see integration of local family child care programs into their system. As the model grows to scale, the strategic leadership team manages adjustments necessary to ensure the program continues to meet the needs of families and support a healthy early childhood system locally. And goals for grant success at scale are identified and tracked by the strategic leadership team, including local capacity to serve all 4-year-olds and increase access for 3-year-olds, ensuring that CPPI funds sufficient classrooms to provide access for local working families. This is where we start to get to full implementation and full access for children in the community.
So for quality at this level, there's a really clear understanding of data collection and intentional thinking about individual skill development for both leadership and educators. We're thinking about a clear plan for implementation of the curriculum to fidelity, which includes support and mentorship of new classroom teachers or new partners that are joining the cohort. There's also a clear alignment of goals for individual skill development and community-wide plan for successful transition to kindergarten. And there's a deep understanding of programming for family child care, and supports are put in place to support them with fully engaging in the partnership.
And at this point, with regard to inclusion, we would expect that they have supports in regard to monitoring systems. So now that data that we have on outcomes for our children that are receiving special education services, those can be relayed to DESE with the Indicator 7 information. So we have those outcomes now that are available to us. We also have behavioral health and social emotional learning that is very well established in the classrooms. And there should be, at this point, we would expect it sort of a deeper understanding of, how to have those social emotional learning opportunities throughout a child's full day. And we would really like programs to start thinking about now having their own policies around the limiting exclusionary discipline at this point. Again, going back to that mid-implementation phase, they've had some time now to really have these supports in place for children, and so to be able to think about their own policies at this time, to have those across all programs would be an expectation.
Here we're going to highlight some of our communities that are working. In the expansion of access role, we see Haverhill. They have been doing what they call the annual Preschool Kindergarten Community Expo, which offers vital early childhood services all in one place for families. And they just had this event on March 19th, and they had hundreds of children in attendance, and families were able to see the variety of services that are accessible within the Haverhill community. And they even got a wonderful feature in the local newspaper to expand interest. In the Sandwich Public Schools, we mentioned before, they've been a real leader in the effort to support family child care programs. Their CPPI partnerships has 12 out of 21 of the community-based child care centers, and they have 6 out of 12 licensed family child care educators that are part of their partnership grant. And tuition assistance is available for families attending. Under equitable access, we'll call out Somerville Public Schools. As we talked about, they have that centralized hub where they have access, and they call themselves the Somerville Partnership for Young Children, SPYC. And through a cash sharing model, SPYC provides direct on-site multi-tiered system of supports in special education services with an early childhood access specialist and coach, a speech and language pathologist, an occupational therapist, and a board-certified behavior analysis. And under alignment for high quality.
So I also want to speak, since Northampton is in my catchment area. They are one of our models for the itinerant team, but I'd also like to call out that although the grant activities are the same, how communities develop a unique program design speaks to the needs of the children and families that they're serving. And in Northampton, one of the keys to success around their itinerant team has been prioritizing professional development by cultural coaching for the educators in connection with the itinerant team. The coaches work with the education team to sort of unpack those weekly IEP goals so individual children can have consistent skill development, not just when the team is there, but across the child's week and day. When we look at Lowell, they've really prioritized degree attainment of all their educators in CPPI classrooms. In addition, they provide workforce development opportunities around a common curriculum and assessment tool that provides an alignment of curriculum activities across the district and community-based providers. So when an itinerant team goes into those classrooms, they're seeing the same type of lesson activities and planning and skill development. And finally, for Boston, they utilize CPPI funding to provide an enhancement of access for children and families with a staged approach to partnership and community-based partners. And they focus in on curriculum alignment with their curriculum Boston focus, and CPPI funding targets quality access for 3-year-olds, specifically in this community.
Last slide. I'm going to run through this one quickly because actually I'm presenting. I realized we probably should have put this first, but because I didn't really set up the structures that we're planning to use to actually launch this next iteration. We have posted a notice of intent to post a new scope for this grant so that we've been explicit about the fact that we're planning to put this grant out. It's going to follow a phased approach, which you see mapped out here. Phase 1 is focusing on sustaining what we currently have, and that is what will be launched at the same time that we post the scope. And that is available to all of our current grantees and for level funding and for planning grantees to increase funding to begin early implementation. Phase 2 and 3 obviously are pending appropriation, but that is where phase 2 would provide current grantees with the option for expansion, for continuing to expand and build through the sequence of, activities and phases that was just described across the different priorities. And phase 3 would be another planning opportunity for new communities that had not have this funding. So this is where we are, and we're happy to take questions. I saw people taking notes. So.
CPPI day here at the board meeting.
Every day is CPPI day, Paul.
Can I,
T-shirts.
can I comment and question? One is on the opening of the reprocurement of the grant. I just want to call out because I think what stuck out to me was the 7-year cycle. And some of that is, we always talk even around budgeting and dollars around predictability. And I know that 7-year cycle is reliant on funding, but I think the message to say that we stand by you for that amount of time is so important. And because under that there's a good amount of just like trust building and relationship building that needs to happen to get that flywheel moving on all of the beginning implementation, mid implementation. So that just hit me. And I wonder in that same spirit, if I could just ask a question on what supports organically, informally, formally that might be in place to help support that leadership team, right? As they do come together from sometimes different places, right? And then now they've got to kind of come to this aligned vision of how to deliver care in a new way in their community. So I'm just curious what supports, again, informal. And I love the testimony earlier where I think some of it is just happening organically. They're kind of leaning on each other, but I just wonder if your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can start and then I'll pass it on to others. I think this is something we have thought about a lot, and one thing I think we recognize is that looking forward, again, pending appropriation, but we should think about whether there is training that we can find, particularly for the grant coordinator, because that's a pivotal role in leading that leadership work, and it is a very particular skill set. So that is one thing we can do. I will say current grantees who have been doing this work are fabulous supports of each other. There is a very close community of grantees that reach out to each other and look to each other for support and guidance around that work as well. And then the team here also is a very active participant in all of those meetings and provides ongoing support, on occasion facilitation for difficult conversations, and generally an ear for the grant coordinator as well to lean on and think about and problem solve and sort of figure out how to move things forward.
Thank you. And my only other comment, you've got 30 people, 30 districts kind of enrolled in this, communities enrolled in this, which I think is nice to allow you to sort this stuff out, right? Like what's working, what's not, there's different phases of the work. Is the growth of CPI purely predicated on funding?
It's a combination. Funding is a critical part of it.
Sure.
But I think, and this is true within grantees as well as for us across grantees, there's a level of investment that goes into starting this work and getting it off the ground successfully. There's internal agency capacity that's needed
Yep.
to do the work. So
I guess I bucket all that in funding. Yeah.
yeah,
It's gonna
but
take-
it is also, I think if you were to come to me, I guess, Commissioner, you can disagree and say, we can fund all of the 350 odd communities in Massachusetts tomorrow, would we say yes? I might say that's probably a bad idea, just to jump into it.
Yep.
But I think that the pace at which we've been growing, where we can keep it moving
Yeah.
very briskly and think about a target like the gateway cities, which has been a target that we've had, that's a manageable number, and that's something that we can take on and, keep it moving and growing.
Yeah,
Of
and
course,
the way
we
that it's built.
welcome funding for all 350 cities and towns. But I also, I think the other piece of this is that
In the communities where it is more mature, it is not just CPPI funding, right? So we're sort of the glue, the catalyst, a lot of the quality work, kind of catalyzing and supporting some of the inclusion work. But when the district itself or the city has committed funding too, like we're layering those things. And our funding, whether it's through our contracts or vouchers, are also part of this model too. And so that takes some time to kind of mature. Like if you're really getting to full access with the advanced implementation and quality and inclusion, it's going to take more than the $1 million, which is the full implementation funding level now through CPPI.
In the management of it, right? I mean, you've kind of got this staggered cycle, right? So not every community's at the same place at the same time. There's going to be it takes a lot. Yeah.
Or they might be advanced in one area, as the team has
Yeah.
said, but we're working on further advancement
And the
in another
dynamics in
area.
every community is very different,
for sure.
so the support is
Yeah.
geared right to what they need,
Great.
almost like a child.
Yeah. Questions, comments from the board?
Well, I also just want to add that we also want to call out the in-kind that is provided by the CBOs. Oftentimes, program leaders are coming to meetings and taking on the extra task of professional development activities without having their salary on the CPPI budget, as well as the district. You think about invoicing and pulling together all the child data and doing SACIDs, and all of that does fall on the district as well. It's not always reflected in a CPPI budget.
Comments, questions from the board? Nikki?
This is wonderful. And I'm just wondering, in order to be able to tell the story of CPPI, what kind of data have you collected, recognizing that it might be really difficult to collect data across these different places, but I'm just wondering, do we have any information on the number of seats that have been added, or the decrease in exclusionary practices, or any other measures that we could use to sort of better tell the story externally?
And we do have a research report coming out
Oh,
shortly. So we have some good data, and then I think there are some areas where it would be nice to have more data. So I mean, the exclusionary discipline practices, I think that's a constant work in progress in finding the right data set for that. But we do have good data about our system as a whole, and we have been looking at where the CPPI grantees fall in terms of our estimates of access locally in each of these communities. And one thing that we have found in the communities that have been part of CPPI for the longest, we've seen both within CPPI, but also just sort of more broadly within the community, higher levels of access, particularly for 4-year-old children in those communities. So we are seeing that this works both directly to expand access, but it is also part of a community level effort and attention to the issue of access, and it isn't, to the Commissioner's point, the only solution.
But it's the important sort of thing that starts it.
It starts it, and it really focuses on the alignment and quality of the effort as well.
I think, I think to the extent that we are both managing, allowing flexibility at the local level to meet the needs of how that district is structured, what the needs of the children and families in that community are. But if you recall from Salem last year, it was a long time ago, but they are tracking literacy outcomes for kids who participated in CPPI classrooms through 1st and 2nd grade and seeing quite remarkable outcomes. Yesterday, we were hearing about classroom scores in terms of instructional, social, emotional development. So there's a lot of data tracking that's happening locally in terms of the outcomes for the children that are participating in the programs. I think we're still in the process of trying to figure out how to aggregate that into a narrative or a story about the outcomes, but there is a heavy data focus. One of the other things they talked about in Somerville yesterday, which I think is probably being tracked in other districts too, is just the number of formal IEPs that get referred after someone's been in a CPPI classroom. So the itinerant team in Somerville, you know, they had, I think, something like 18 formal referrals and 2 ended up in informal IEPs for kids. And I think if you hadn't had those special education services in the classroom with those kids and supporting the educators, you probably would have had a lot more referrals for formal IEPs. And so in the end, I think it really is both a cost savings and also we're helping those kids develop the skills they need to access the curriculum much earlier.
But I think, I mean, that was a great example because I think it calls out the ways in which the data collection is both statewide and systemic. So sort of 2 pieces of that are requirements of CPPI, having a class observation conducted twice a year in every classroom. So we do have that data and we have seen the growth in the class scores. And I will call out, we've seen both growth across the board, but also instructional support scores that are higher than our typical. And in some communities like Somerville, really surprisingly high for a metric that typically does not get very high scores on the instructional support. We also have all the enrollment information, so we know who are attending CPPI classrooms, how they're serving the communities.
What curriculum they're using.
But then also, we do want to support that local district level collection of data. I mean, literacy outcomes, those are being tracked locally. And that work is important for every community to be thinking about and looking at their own data. So that's also part of the grant work that we want to continue to support and encourage.
Great question.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Just to follow on that, so are you saying the class data is the only systematic quality data that we're receiving across all of the districts that are involved?
That's been our focus in tracking quality for the grant since the inception of the grant.
Is there, in like 10 years out, like, well, including PEG, right? So 10 years out, do you have thoughts on what I don't want to overburden people, right? Because that's wild. But like, what are the 3 to 5 metrics that everyone should be tracking beyond class?
I do think that the piece, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the kindergarten ready metrics, the literacy outcomes, like all of those pieces are a very important part of the story and they are collected locally in Massachusetts. I will call out and give a shout out to work that's being integrated into Literacy Launch where there is now regular kindergarten screening going on and that is consistent across districts in Massachusetts with a set of approved screeners and work has been done to start aggregate the data. We are dipping our toes into that work as a way to start thinking about and tracking what's happening in these communities. But it is a step forward and it's something that is now available that we have not had before.
And we work in close collaboration with our colleagues at DESE on a number of those. One metric also being how many children are coming into kindergarten with a preschool experience, and we're hoping to see growth in that area because of the access, and we are seeing growth in that area.
And over half of the PRISM 1 grantees are CPPI grantees.
Yeah, the integration across those is particularly powerful as well.
Which is Literacy Launch.
Yeah, which is
We say
also part of
PRISM,
it.
but
Yeah.
we will have a 2-pager kind of on the CPPI data. It's going to be more on like participation and access, not as much on the outcomes yet, but as part of our sort of KPIs and our dashboard, and we recently released a C3 paper, and so we'll have one on CPPI shortly as well.
But I think just to circle back to the bones of your question, it is again telling the story of access, quality, and access to special education. And the overarching picture of all of that is how our kids do. That is really why we're doing this and an important piece of the picture as well.
I just think that that's a really big part of like telling that story between 30 districts and the rest of the districts that are not, right? Like, what is the impact of this grant? And I think clearly from the public comment, we see the local impact, but how do we tell the more holistic story at the statewide level? I do have a clarification question just on slide 15, which is the slide about future program staffing requirements. And Jocelyn, you were talking about what this might look like in terms of dedicated is this programmatic level resources that you would hope to, like every participating program, not the district?
Yes.
I'm curious how you think that fits, or maybe you've seen it already for family childcare.
So this is actually something that we are looking at through the contract, which works with both family childcare systems and family childcare educators, as well as center-based programs. I think the piece with family childcare that makes a huge difference is some sort of structure like a system that can provide support directly to the individual educators. So like when I think about how the same expectations in the contract that we put on sort of the entities running programs, we think about at the system level. So it's not, you wouldn't expect an individual educator to have, you know,
But we
their own
also,
educational leader.
we're really careful to talk about it as roles, because we know in family childcare, they're like the facilities manager, they're the accounts payable manager, they're also the family education coordinator, they're the educational leader, so, and at the individual, at the end of, like, and 10 other things. So at the individual program level, what you want to make sure is that, you know, we were careful not to say, like, you have to have an FTE to do each of these things. These are roles we need to have in order to deliver on the CPPI model, like who's the educational leader, who's the program leader, who's doing family coordination. Some's going to happen at the community level, some will happen at the individual program level. So I think what we want is like the function to be identified, designated, and happening. But we have to give some flexibility on how that happens to support the sort of uniqueness of each individual community. Like, I mean, there were like 50 people at the Somerville site visit. I'm just guessing Northampton, that'll be a few less. And Laura might be 6 of these things. I don't know, but but it's the function we recognize as being necessary for success based on the learnings we've had over the last 10 years. But that doesn't mean it has to be one FTE for each thing.
Yeah, that makes more sense for
Yeah.
family childcare. Along with that, I guess I'm curious how many of the 30 or so districts do include already family childcare. Knowing that as part of the eligibility for the planning, it does say 2 CBO partners, and I don't know if that necessarily means family childcare inclusive, or is that just centers, or how are we conceiving
So
of those?
currently Northampton and Sandwich include family childcare, and then one of our planning grantees, Gateway Regional School District, is including family childcare. But there's efforts happening in a number of other communities, including Somerville.
And that CBO definition is not exclusive. It's inclusive of any program type that.
Oh, cool. So
Districts
you
want to
could
work
be,
with.
you could be, just for everyone's clarification, you could be a district or a regional district or a mayor's office and municipal, now that we've expanded that, and you could choose 2 family childcare providers, and that's
Exactly
your,
what's happening in Gateway Regional School District.
amazing. I'm very curious
family
about the
childcare.
learning
Only
from
family
that.
child. They're the only licensed childcare in the whole district.
That's great. That's wonderful. I'm really curious about the learning from that particular, from the planning aspect of it and the starting aspect of bringing those folks in the planning phase as opposed to in any later phase, and what that looks like.
And, you know, most of our family childcare providers are mixed age groups. So it's a very complicated juggle for the providers themselves about sort of how are they doing class and curriculum for the preschoolers to comply with CPPI or participate in CPPI, and then they have school age kids and infants and toddlers, and so, yeah.
Just quickly, a deep gratitude for the work that you do. This is Preschool Partnership Initiative. Just want to highlight the partnership piece, obviously between district or municipality and provider. But then your partnership with DESE as the interim commissioner of DESE, really appreciate that partnership. And there's so many parts of this about which I am so excited. The future's bright with this program, really. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Great job, team.
And with that, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you all. welcome back, everyone. Thank you. Looking forward to the next agenda item. Just a small housekeeping thing. I don't want anyone to take this personally, but I'm on childcare pickup today. So I'm going to slide out here with George at 3. Okay, a few of us. So I appreciate that the board will be here. Maria will take over chairing the meeting, but I just wanted to disclose that so it doesn't look like a few of us just walked out of the room. So it's not the content. This is important. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the heads up on that. And I think, given that, we'll move briskly through the framing and the overview to get to the panel, and then can come back to some of the details and questions. We'll have them. Are we ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
I mean, I'll just start by reminding the board that, more than a year and a half ago, but really over my entire time here, we've been talking about workforce as the top priority and issue for the agency, and the need for a meaningful career pathway that takes us all the way from sort of the beginning of someone being interested in coming into the field all the way to expert and novice, and that is the true sort of anchor and foundation for compensation increases and professionalization and recognition of the field. So really transitioning from a sort of one-time certification, which we've had, to really pathways in and through and up for those who are working in the field, to make it a meaningful way for them to stay in the field and grow their professional skills. And so for the last year and a half, we've been working on a new educator credential. And we are really pleased today to be able to update you a little bit on where we are on that work, the sort of structure and thinking of it. And we have had a working group of talented educators from representative across the system who have joined us today to share their experiences, what they like, what they're worried about. So not ready to roll this out yet, but wanted to share sort of the substantive thinking and work that's gone on, as well as hear from our community partners around their experience as we continue in this journey. All right, Jocelyn and Ellen.
Thank you. So just to lay the context, we are developing a new credential system that meets the goals that the commissioner just talked about. That's the long-term vision for the system that we are trying to build, that it really is accessible to all educators and program types, that it is competency-based, and it supports success and advancement across the full range of opportunities available for somebody in their professional life in the field. We've been working on clear and accessible entry points, and we want this to be a system that is useful, so that the credential has value not just because we require it, but because it has value because of what it says about the educator and the skill set that you can expect somebody coming to your program with that credential to have. And we also then need to figure out, how do we get to the system? It doesn't happen overnight. We are planning a staged and careful launch of the system, and a lot of what we're talking about going forward is thinking through the details of how do we get there. But in thinking about the feedback that we've gotten about the system, one thing we've heard, and you'll hear from the panel, is really consistent enthusiasm from all program types in being part of this new system and what this offers and the opportunity it provides to the field, with cautions around the transition, and really that we need to be careful about a transition to something that is very new, different, and ambitious. And one thing that we're really focusing on is starting with the support systems. So as we transition into the new credential, we're thinking about how to build the opportunities through higher education and through a new professional development pathway that we'll talk about, and making some of the early opportunities available immediately or as soon as we can, so that the field can start moving and growing through the structure without it being a requirement that is our starting place. We are also looking into building apprenticeships and apprenticeship structures to support entry, and thinking about ways in which we can ensure that the current experiences and qualifications of our current educator have currency in the new system. So if you have a teacher certification, you have a place in the new system. And we're looking, again, across all the program types and thinking about what that will look like as well. And obviously, communication is going to be critical in all of this. We need to make sure we're clear about what we're doing, that people know what opportunities are available for them, and that we don't move too quickly, but as we're making things available, we're learning from the experience about how to make it accessible and how to make it work for the educators. The final thing I'll call out about the system that I think is important to recognize, we are as a field used to a system that is written into regulations. Certification exists because it's required, and it exists for a small subset of roles, which I'll call out when we go through the presentation. We're now looking at building a system that exists. I mean, it will be written into law when we write regulations, but it exists apart from the regulations. It is bigger than the regulations and any minimum requirements that we might set anywhere. And understanding where and how there are opportunities to use a system like that and to make it effective and leverage the opportunities is going to be an important part of launching this. Also, just to call out that we are focusing, and have been for many years, but in particular focus on the credential and the role of educational leadership. As we move towards a system that really values the learning that happens while one is working and the importance of learning and trying the things that one is learning and getting better at the skill through practice, educational leadership provides a very important part of the system to support educators in the program in doing that work and support educators in the planning and organization of their professional learning journey. So we will talk about the ways in which we're also very explicitly building that out into the new system. This is just very briefly to remind ourselves of sort of like the stages that we've begun to, from relaunching certification to the process that we're coming to the conclusion of around planning the new pathways, socializing the basic structures that we're building, and planning for the launch. And later on, we'll talk about where we're going next and what follows.
And this is an illustration of the expanded professional development options that we're talking about, that is inclusive of FCCs, out-of-school time, and group and center-based programs. And then we just want to call out here is that the pathways are designed around educator preferences, and they're rooted in accessibility, multimodalities, and delivery of those trainings and courses, adult learning practice, and comparability between the pathways and mobility between the pathways. And I think it's just also important to note that we looked at the complexity of program schedules and the needs for flexibility in professional development delivery, and taking that into account. As Jocelyn said, the current certifications and the ways in which we can honor and value the expertise and the work that's already been done by those in the field. And I think we can move right to the next slide. Over the last several months, we've been working with a whole subset of.
Could I just call out?
Oh, sure. Yeah, go right ahead.
I think the piece to particularly call out here is that Ellen was talking about is the idea that there are going to be two pathways. We have a current state that really requires largely participation in higher education courses. We want to build towards a pathway where the focus is more on a higher education pathway that builds towards certificates and degrees, while also thinking about and developing a professional development pathway that is outside of higher ed, but of a commensurate quality that supports educators for whom higher ed is not a goal, like degrees are not a goal potentially, or it is not a good fit, or for those who already have a degree in another subject and maybe need to just, build out the skill set around early education, but don't need to return.
And just to add to that also is that we're seeing apprenticeship models that are structured around both higher education and professional development, so there's something for each. And just calling out also, taking into account the years of experience people have alongside their training and coursework. And as I said, we've been working with a whole host of stakeholders, which you'll learn more about today with the panel, and their work with us along, they represent, family child care, out of school time, center-based, higher education, as we look here, community organizations, and their feedback and inputs have been collected, and we've been using it to inform the credentialing structures and alongside the competencies. We've been gathering their insights around the cost models and salary scale, and as Jocelyn said, the leadership competencies. And these working groups have been amazing. They've dedicated their time, energy, and effort month after month, and these will be ongoing working groups and stakeholder meetings, and as you'll see later, the most recent iteration of our credentialing structure is based on their feedback and input along the way.
And we look forward to hearing in a few minutes from representatives
yes,
of that group.
So this is the new structure, and we won't go into it in depth here because Jocelyn has a breakdown of these things, but this is the most recent iteration. We've had several, and as you can see, there's just a structure that each program type has provided input and guidance on where they see the roles and responsibilities of the types of positions they hold, and they're all quite unique and different, and we're doing our best to capture that so that there's a place for everyone, including, as Jocelyn said earlier, the certifications and the work that's already been achieved will have currency in the new system.
So I'm going to break this down over the next few slides and pull it apart a little bit. As a starting place, I think I just want to call out the arrow on the left-hand side of the blue layer, which is the entry to credential. I think to date, we've had a system that, you start in the certification when you're a teacher and you've accomplished some training to be a teacher. What we want to make sure we recognize is a stepping stone into that professional pathway. So when you think about an educator who comes into a program without any experience, but an interest, a desire to work with children, we want to find ways to both recognize early skill development and also support the educator in finding their way into the professional pathway. So thinking about it from the experience of the educator, you come in, you get a job, you have to take the EEC essentials on Strong Start, you have to get a background check, that happens for everybody. And then you have an opportunity once you start in the field. You can get if you get first aid and CPR certified, there are many trainings available on the Strong Start that are self-paced now. There's an opportunity to take an approved package of, we're looking roughly 20 hours of additional training early in your field, and also some application of what's learned in the essentials, so sort of supported practice on site around all the things that you've learned to actually make sure you understand and are able to implement those things. Over the course of 3 months, at minimum, you can be recognized as somebody who has done some work and has started yourself on the pathway to being a professional, while at the same time supporting the educator and accessing supports and understanding, okay, what does it mean to move to a level 1 educator position? What are the pathways? How do I approach that? What's involved in the higher education pathway? What's involved in the professional development pathway? How do I start on those pathways, and which direction do I think I want to go on, at least as a first step? And so it's really bridging the gap between people coming in without really having a rounding necessarily in the field, and helping people understand and move into the system that we've been building. So you can see how this comes together at the educator level. These are all the levels that are for educators working directly with children in classrooms and in homes. You can also see that right now our current teacher certification and lead certification fit in relatively neatly at level 1 and level 2. But one very important thing that we heard feedback from the field over the years, and that we felt strongly about too, is that there are educators that want to stay in the classroom for many, many years, sometimes their full career. And there's a wealth of expertise that goes above and beyond what one knows at sort of the lead teacher level that is developed that we wanted to recognize. So we added in a higher level, that was sort of more focusing on the expert level of an educator. When sharing this with the working groups, we heard from out-of-school time and family childcare programs that administrative skills are very, very important in combination with the educator skills. It's not something that happens later on and is a different role the way it is in early childhood center-based programs. And that they also there was a general desire, and we get into this when we get to the leadership level, to have many different pathways for educators to move either through the educator level or to move to other roles. If they want to stay in the field, but move on and do something new and different that challenges them in different ways. And a lot of appreciation for the level 3 and the expertise. And then finally, that when you are moving into level 3 and moving into higher levels of expertise, you are also sometimes developing specific understandings. You could be a teacher that is really interested in children's social emotional development and becomes an expert at working with children, presenting with a variety of behaviors, and that's a resource, and that's a skill set that should also be recognized. So we added in these optional endorsements in response to that feedback. So these are not things that you need to move through these level, but if this is something that works for your role or for your interest, these are endorsements that you can add on through an additional sort of light touch layer of competency-based training. We added an administrator endorsement for family childcare and out-of-school time educators that can be paired with level 1 or above, but it doesn't require that you move through the full sort of progression of skill at an educator level to get to the director level the way teachers typically do in the center-based. It recognizes that the administration happens right out of the gate when you're running a family childcare program. That's part of the package. We've also heard a lot about the importance of the focus on infant toddler, on preschool, for family childcare on mixed age, for out-of-school time and the out-of-school time age group. So recognizing that building in opportunities to be focused on age-specific expertise, particularly when you move into level 2, is an important part to include in this. And I already talked about the content expert is recognizing that deep dive at the expert level. So this is the leadership level, and here's where you can see we really have built out the options significantly from what we currently have. So on the right-hand side, you have the program leader credential. This is where the current director certification sits. This is the administrative and sort of educational lead in the program, typically in an early childhood center-based program. And that's a very important role in a program, and it's a role that many people like, but there are many other roles that are critical to have available and to recognize and to support. Mentors being one that we've heard a lot about and have started to really work closely on as we've built out apprenticeship opportunities. That peer mentoring is an essential support for educators in a program. It's something that really is a different skill set than just being a teacher, and often teachers are like, oh, hey, you're a great teacher. Could you mentor someone? But there is actually a skill set that is involved in that, and we've been building out both definition of what that means in training and also thinking about coaches, trainers, other parts of the system, and recognizing there's also another layer of expertise, and that's where the educational leader, you can build on to that. And again, have heard good interest in this, particularly, for example, from family child care around the mentorship opportunities that this has provided. But we also heard that there's content expert that factors into some of those other roles too. So we've added that endorsement in at different levels. So now, I would like to call.
I wanted to mention one other thing, because I heard it yesterday, and I've heard it since I've been back at EEC, which is not to make the front door harder. And I think that's the other thing this team has done. So I think we wanted to really represent and all the different age groups and the experience and the expert level and the leadership, all the different leadership ones. But we also didn't want to raise the front door, because we have a high demand for teachers coming into the field, and we have folks who may be coming from a different discipline and want to enter the field, or are interested in working with kids but never done that before. So people have been really clear, like, don't make the front door harder to get through, but once we get them in the door, let's make sure there's a real path that they can go on. And I think this team has really done that. So we have had a working group of folks who've participated, and we have some amazing representatives from that working group. So I'm going to ask the panelists to come up, and we'll ask Ellen and Jocelyn to come back afterwards and just share with you kind of what happens next in this work. But Brianna and Harold and Paula and Heidi, and I'm going to have you all do a better job than I will of oh, sure. Thank you. Who will do a much better job of introducing themselves, where you work, your expertise, where you fit on the chart. No, I'm just kidding. And all the way on the expert side. And we're, I think, really interested in hearing about your experience with the work so far, kind of what makes you hopeful, and maybe what makes you worried, and a little bit about about the journey so far. And Jocelyn, thank you for agreeing to. So, Paula, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Can I just say real quick? Just thank you for being here. We're your students today, we appreciate you stepping outside of your day-to-day to be here and share with us the kind of lived experience of the work and the policy and the things that we're trying to do every day. So thank you. And with that, Paula, go ahead.
And they didn't like what they all had to do to get here today.
Yes.
Like you'll hear, but Paula and Harold run a family child care program. So in order to get coverage, so the parents can be there, and Heidi is trying to build a new early childhood center and had to manage the architects in between. So, and Brianna, so what they all had to be here to step out to. So,
Again, just different students today. Think
I see that.
Same one.
But thank you. Thank you for having us, and thank you for giving us the place to be in this table as well. I'm Paula Andrea Echeverry. I'm the co-owner and educator of Paula's Barn Child Care in Springfield, Massachusetts. We are licensed for 10 children, and we work together here with my husband, Harold Blanco. And thank you to my families I'm looking over there and watching. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the support and for trusting us to be here and fighting for our rights and for your kids.
Yeah. I'm Harold Blanco. I'm married to this beautiful woman, and she's also my boss. So we, along with the family child care, we also have a community organization called Eco Latino that groups educators that speak Spanish into the family childcare field, and we help them with resources, support, mentorship, all along to navigate these different situations and kind of support each other, basically, because family childcare could be a very lonely work to do. So we created this group that started a year ago with about 4 members, and now we grow to be 186 educators throughout Massachusetts. So say hello to the group. I know that some of them are watching, so thank you very much for having us here.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Brianna Flannery, and I'm the Deputy Director for Kids Only After School. I have been working in out-of-school time programming for about 20 years now, but I also proudly was born and raised attending for Kids Only After School. So my heart is deeply in this work, and I'm very, very excited and honored to be here. Thank you for the time for us to share and for all the work that we've been doing together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Heidi Osgood Kaufman. I'm with the Metro West YMCA. I met many of you a couple months ago in Framingham. So at our Y, we have early learning before and after school programs as well, and CPPI, CFCE programs, and contracted providers. So we have a lot of different hats, and this is I'm not going to share the decades of time. Yeah, okay, well, it's more than 3, and we'll just sort of leave it at that. But it's an exciting opportunity to be able to move forward and to see the growth. I remember when I first got my director certification back 30 years ago or whatever it was, and I think this is some real neat opportunities to see some growth and improvement within the field. So.
Great. So, if you don't mind, we would like to
We start with
start.
the family child care point of view.
Yeah. So we're honored to be here, part of this discussion, and thank you all for receiving us. When we started about a year ago to be part of this work group, we were really encouraged and promise on this promise of the credential system. We saw the potential and the benefit that this recognized the diverse talents of the within the Massachusetts early education workers. This framework that we're all are kind of building will definitely be more flexible and inclusive on the different talents and the different things that every educator brings to the table. And we really appreciate the EEC to include the family child care educators from the ground on this system, because we know that from the past or on any other interests, sometimes we come right at the middle or towards the end, or sometimes we're never being called to this kind of situation. So we're really humbled that you guys include us from the beginning.
This new credential system presents a significant step forward in professionalizing early education in Massachusetts. The tiered educator levels and specialized leader credential offer clear pathways for career growth and leadership development with our field. For the first time, professionals will have a structured framework to advance their careers, acquire new skills, and gain recognition for increasing expertise. The dual pathways for professional development, covering both academic learning and valuable practical experience, including apprenticeship, democratize access to credentialing and empower individuals to progress based on their unique strengths. Furthermore, the opportunity to earn specialized endorsements allow educators to deepen their knowledge in specific areas, enhancing their professional profile and creating opportunities for more specialized roles. Crucially, for family child care educators who are owners like us, this new system offers a long-awaited elevation of our professional standing. By providing a formal credential, it now acknowledges our vital role, enhances our credibility in the eyes of families and the community,
and position our work as the value profession it truly is.
As we embrace the potential of this new credential system to advance the careers and elevate the status of the family child care educators, we have a few questions on it. And it's, we want to make sure that EEC in this whole process ensure that the new frameworks actively support the professional's trajectory of each educator. It doesn't matter where you're coming from and which way did you get to the point that you are. This system should be able to recognize this. This includes the accessible pathways for individual to move through from tier to tier in acquiring levels and acquiring endorsements for straining their professional development. We need to recognize the value and the diverse professional development, making career advancement and attainable for those who vary educational backgrounds and experiences. For our dedicated family child care educators, it will be particularly important that the credential process is designed to be supporting and empowering. And it truly reflects the expertise and the contribution that everybody provides. We want to make sure that this become a powerful tool to be able to show what we are good at and the way that we're providing the care for the kids and the educational in this pathway.
We understand and support the move towards a competency-based system aimed at ensuring quality. By focusing on creating clear pathways for professional growth and enhancing the recognition of family child care educators, this new system has the potential to be truly transformative tool. We respectfully urge to the Secretary, to the Commissioner, to all the board, to consider mechanism with the new credential system framework. They actively support career advancement for all. There are many educators, they don't have their status, legal status, and they have the programs, so they can be able to have the classes in colleges. So if they can have this education in place for them, the quality of the program to move forward.
From one level to another, this could create a bigger problem.
This will ensure a just, inclusive, and ultimately more successful transition for all early education professionals in Massachusetts. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Yeah.
And also, the transition of the system. Many educators will need access to computers and also training for the process of the new credentialing to add all the information to the program. So now we have some friends and colleagues, they have every month when they had to submit the C3, and this is very basic, the recertification. So coming to a new program and this credentialing with all the certifications and how to submit the information, they will need a lot of support.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yep.
For the implementation.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to speak from the out-of-school time perspective. And first, just a little bit about FKO and our educators. So for the past 40 years, For Kids Only After School has operated exclusively EEC licensed year-round out-of-school time programs. And this makes us a bit unique because many other out-of-school time programs also operate early childhood classrooms, but we serve solely the school-age child. We serve about 1,600 school-age children each year across 5 communities and 11 program sites. We're in the cities of Chelsea, Everett, Peabody, Revere, and Winthrop. And we employ over 200 educators, both part-time and full-time. And these educators, which represents positions that are in the out-of-school time field, consists of full-time site coordinators, assistant site coordinators, full-time registered out-of-school time apprentices, part-time group leaders, assistant group leaders, behavioral health coordinators, inclusion specialists, enrichment specialists, and more. So as you can see, we have a really diverse group of educators in our programs. Out-of-school time educators hold a unique role. They work at the intersection of childcare, education, youth development, and community engagement. They build trust, deep trusting relationships with children. They serve as mentors and role models. They design engaging hands-on experiences that give children opportunities to learn in art, STEM, sports, leadership, and more. And they support children's social emotional development, their identity, and life skills. Our educators come from diverse backgrounds, and they often follow non-traditional career paths. Many bring their own experiences to their work each day, and they have a deep commitment to youth work. Yet, despite their impact, they often go unrecognized, and they work without the pay, status, or professional structure that they deserve. Historically, EEC has not had a credentialing system tailored to out-of-school time educators. We have relied solely on licensing regulations, which focuses on the educator's age and their months of experience, not competencies or professional growth. So that's why we're so excited about this new credentialing system and its commitment to including out-of-school time educators in this work. This system will create a clear career path for our staff. It will establish consistent statewide competencies. It will offer a portable credential, giving our staff the opportunity to move from program to program and across the state. And most importantly, it will help us elevate the profession. We believe that this will improve program quality, support staff recruitment and retention, and foster a culture of learning, belonging, and reflection. But with this excitement also comes some worry and concern. We are truly at a pivotal moment. To truly professionalize our field, we must focus on the specific needs of out-of-school time educators.
Yep.
Similar to family childcare. We support a unified credentialing system for all early educators, including school age, but we do worry that out-of-school time might be treated as an afterthought, added on to an early ed system instead of recognizing it for its distinct roles. But I will say we're so appreciative to the work that's been done so far, and we're excited to keep continuing working together to build a system that reflects the unique needs of our workforce. We have some questions that we're exploring, such as what positions should this credentialing system be for, or what content should be included in the new training programs. What college courses might be considered within the credentialing system. And we also must be realistic. For many out-of-school time educators, this is a part-time temporary job. But for others, it truly becomes a long-term career. And for most out-of-school time providers, resources are limited. Full-time roles, higher wages, and benefits are not always feasible. So as we move forward, we're excited to build a system that offers flexibility, honors diverse career journeys, and ensures that all of our educators, regardless of their role, feel valued and supported. So thank you again, and thank you to all of our colleagues and everyone at EEC, Commissioner, Secretary, for allowing us to speak today.
Thank you.
So my role is a little easier than the others because the current credentialing system works very much in alignment with early learning and center-based programs. I sort of alluded to it. I don't think it's been updated for at least, I don't know. Again, I got my director certification in the mid-90s, and I don't think there's been a lot that's changed since then, but I could be wrong on that. Don't think so, but possible. There's some really good things. It is time. But I want to emphasize that the way that it's being done makes sense, and it is being thoughtful, intentional, and it's not easy. And to try to figure out how to make things work in a way that is going to help elevate quality, work across the different types of programs and services that we provide, and recognize the real depth of experiences and concepts that we're trying to do. It is something that should be done thoughtfully and carefully. And I really want to give credit to EEC and the team for making sure that that happens and involving us in that thought process. So yes, it is time, but it's also more important to do it right than it is to do it quickly.
Yep.
So thank you. And thank the others behind me that are part of the process, because it's not just a couple of us, it's a large group of us. I think some of the things that are really exciting to me, I love the multiple entry points. There are people who come into this field from multiple different places. Some sort of fall into it. Like this is sort of, they're looking for a part-time job. Hey, I like kids. It's easy, right? Childcare is simple. And then you realize that early education and care is not simple. It's not just care that we're doing. We are doing so much more.
Yep.
And to try to figure out a way to help people recognize that and help people feel supported, whether they speak English as their first language or not, whether they have different learning styles. The multiple different pathways, the multiple different approaches are amazing. There's the traditional approach, the standard you go to, you graduate high school, you go to college, hopefully, or you may start in the community college, which is now much more affordable than it used to be. Or you might start off by saying, I don't know if I want to go on to further my education, so what options are there that way? The side-by-side approach of incorporating reflective practice and actually interacting with the kids, it's fabulous to hear in a class about what you should do to organize a group of 3-year-olds to go outside. It's a whole other thing to try to get a whole bunch of 3-year-olds to go outside. And I mean, it's just family childcare. Oh my gosh, I don't know how you guys do it, but thank you for doing it. It is not as simple when you hear about it in a classroom setting, in a formal setting, than to actually do it. And to incorporate that type of learning into the process is really helpful. The sort of entry point is another spot that is exciting, by having a place saying you're brand new to this field and we would like to help you get your toes wet, give you some basic understanding, some basic knowledge, and hopefully from there point you in the right direction. But in the short term, we can recognize that there's some growth and some learning that you can do with the 20 hours or whatever that looks like of additional training and support. That I think can help really engage and help people, new educators become interested in staying in the field by providing that extra support instead of just go, which is unfortunately what a lot of them do. I have educators who've been working in the classrooms for 20 plus years, who have their bachelor's degrees, who are absolutely amazing, who have no desire whatsoever to ever go into administration. To have these opportunities to help them grow and to recognize that skill and that knowledge is another one of those things that is really interesting. And then when I think about how difficult it is for us to hire, and I always find it fascinating when somebody says I'm director certified, or sometimes they know Director 1 versus Director 2, but yes, I meet the certification level, so therefore I can be a director. No. Would love to make that be that simple, but being a director is not as simple as taking a couple of courses and having a couple of years of experience. And in some programs, that probably is sufficient. In other programs, it is not. So to have the different levels of endorsement and the different credentialing systems helps us when we're trying to figure out, okay, how might we be able to, what type of skills are we looking for in these, and the people that we're hiring? And they would already have that determined instead of us trying to figure it out as we're trying to hire. So there's so many different components that that are really exciting and interesting, and I think will help recruit, retain, and strengthen our workforce. And the idea of doing it carefully and thoughtfully instead of just jumping in with both feet saying, okay, well, we have to get this done, so therefore this is how it's going to be, and we're going to roll it out like now. I'm so grateful that that's not the approach that I'm going to say we are taking, because we are taking this as a collective. It's not just EEC, which would have been another concern if that were the case. It's sort of like, okay, here you go, do it. Instead, it becomes let's come up with a system that works for everybody, including everybody who would be involved in the process.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. And also, again, reiterate, thank you for taking the time away from the show to be here.
Thank you.
Questions for our panelists or for Jocelyn and Ellen about the credential? Are there other things you all would want to share?
I would like to.
These guys said something. You might want to
Yes,
reflect on it, or how it goes.
No,
Yeah.
I would like to add that another benefit that we see from this system is that once it's already established and everybody started to participate and you can identify, oh, I am level 1 or I'm in the entry level, I'm level 2. We can use that as a program, as a family child care program. We can use that as a tool, as a marketing tool, saying, hey, I have a level 2 or level 3 programmer leader here and in my family child care. And I have my assistant is level 1 and is towards level 2, and or I have this endorsement within, and that will create another tactic, another skill that I can put in my resume, hang on my door, put it in my badge, and say, hey, in the social media, and say, hey, I just earned this badge of level 2, level 3, and I'm a better educator because I went through this process. And even more, when I decide to maybe move from family child care to go and work in a center base or out of school, another after school program, say, hey, I'm already at level 2. Maybe here's my certifications, here my diplomas, whatever, and you will be able to pay me accordingly to this because I already have proven that I have that certification. So those are things, and eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to obtain maybe better subsidy rates because my program have level 2 and level 3 and more endorsement teachers and educators in my program, and maybe EC will be able to give us a bonus because we have better educators in our program. We're servicing better the children. So I think that in the future, definitely this will work. There's a lot of things that we have to do and define very clear. When you say the communication part, that will be a must in all languages, explaining to people one time after another what's going on in each level to make sure that everybody's on board so this can be a success. Yeah.
So it feels very much like you all feel like it's really time for us to have this credential and have it be more dynamic, and you like the sort of multiple pathways in, and a lot of different people are going to be able to see themselves on this pathway and come in. And I hear from educators all the time, I will remind the board that during COVID, we suspended certification. And as needing and updating as it is, people really appreciate having that teacher certification and recognition from the agency as part of what they're doing. So we rolled it back in optionally, but part of what we want to do is really recognize the skills and attainments, and by broadening it and focusing on age groups and different settings, we're able to do that. And I also hear your cautions loud and clear about how we implement this and what the tools and supports are, all the way from the technology to be able to enter your information in the new educator portal to making sure that the college coursework or the professional development or the apprenticeship offerings are lined up to their credential. So it is a complex, and like the partners who we're working with, in addition to like our community educators, from higher education and from labor and workforce development and from other places, it's like we're trying to get a lot of things lined up all together. So your patience in it is also appreciated in a lot of ways because it's not going to be fast, but you're making it better with your participation. So I'm really grateful for you being here today and for your ongoing. And I just want to recognize for a second Eugenia Soilis, who is our Director of External Engagement, and whose job it is to make sure that the voices of those who are who will be participating or impacted by any of the work that we do are sitting at the table. And you can see she's doing an excellent job across all. Thank you, Eugenia. So Jocelyn, do you want to just quickly sort of wrap with sort of what comes next? I can drive for you, or yeah, you can. Always have the foot on the accelerator.
As long as there's seatbelts and safety seats, then we're okay.
Buckle up. Right. We say buckle up.
Yeah.
So this is a high-level timeline of the work that remains to do. We've been talking a lot about the levels and the competencies behind those levels that we've been developing and are closing in on finalizing that component for the educator, the leadership levels. We've already done that on the educator side. And as I mentioned earlier, focusing in now on building the professional. Oh yeah, thank you, Eugenia. About focusing in now on building the first set of opportunities that are aligned to the new credentials. So again, reminding everybody, certification is staying. That is always that continues to be an opportunity until the regulation change happens, when then we formally make the final transition. So there's always a pathway in for the time being through certification. But we are simultaneously working with higher education on a new foundational certificate, which is a different way and a more organized way through the higher ed route. It also yields a certificate that is credit bearing and has currency and articulates to a degree, which is important.
Be consistent across the schools.
And it's consistent across the schools, yes, important point. And also building, we have a contract with a team at EDC to develop a new set of trainings that will be the supports for level 1 and level 2 on the professional development side. So that is work where we're sort of building out the learning goals right now and the structure and how it's going to be organized. And then that team is going to sprint ahead and create us a set of opportunities, starting with level 1 package and then building out a level 2 package that we hope to have released sometimes in sort of around the winter of next year, maybe sooner if we really move fast. And that would be something that was available through the academy and the professional development center. So we're using the systems that we already have in place to make the training available, and designing something that can support educators in moving in this new world, while simultaneously also working on some of the leadership roles. At the same time, we're also developing a new educator portal. The current system is not the right system to support something like this. We're actually reprocuring both the current learning management system and now have a team on board to develop a new educator portal. So we hope to have an updated and far more seamless and easy to access system, attending to things like language access and cell phone usage. Like, we recognize that many people are going to have to do this on a cell phone. They're not necessarily using a laptop. And that there are technology requirements that we'll have to address and think about how we support people with. And this is ongoing. So right at this moment in time, that team is really building out a new way to apply for certification, which will be hopefully a little bit easier and more streamlined. But through the summer and going into the fall, we're going to look into starting to develop a new registry and the infrastructure that we need to support people in moving along. Something that's a little bit more complex, but also can be done where the actual process is simpler. So you can register and track the trainings and the things that you have done, and the system automatically collates that. You don't have to, scan and upload a lot of documents the way we do right now, and there's a lot less time for the TQ team in reviewing a lot of documents. Simultaneously, regulations are an important component of this. We do ultimately need to revise our regulations to make the final transition from the current system to a new system. That is an ongoing process, and there's a lot of work happening right now. It's not work that happens fast, and there's an extensive amount of public comment that it's going to have to be part of that process. So we see that on a longer-term timeline, but also something that's important to recognize is happening continually while we're working on this. And then finally, stakeholder engagement is critical. We've got these fabulous teams that we've been working with that have really been instrumental in helping us think through the nuances of how we're building this. We will continue to work with these groups going forward. We also do plan to, as we sort of finalize through this process some decisions and opportunities, think about ways to bring the information out to the field more broadly and have wider and broader engagements, both to share where we are and then communicate information, as you said, as frequently and in as many languages and as many settings and in as many ways as we can, so that we are helping people understand. But I will also say we recognize it will take time And we recognize that as well. Like, we're going to have to put something out. The early adopters will find it, and they'll jump on, and they will tell people about it. But it will take time, and we learned this with C3 too. It will take time for the word to get out broadly in the field. And I don't think we want to transition our systems fully until we feel like we've reached a point of saturation where people do understand what we're doing and what we're talking about. So this summarizes the next steps I just said. I think I just calling out explicitly the package that we're really focusing in on right now is the first set of opportunities that we want to make available to the field that are aligned with the new credential. So trainings both in higher education through the foundational certificate as well as professional development pathways for level 1 and level 2. We're looking into trainings that will support the FCC and out-of-school time administrator endorsement. We already have a mentor training that we've developed over the past year, and it has been piloted. We want to expand that and build a mentor credential around that. And we have the systems that support Director 1 and Director 2. So continuing to build on those and thinking about how those integrate in, and also thinking about building out a professional development option for that level. So that's the starting place, covering both educator and administrative leader, but we will continue to build to the broader picture that we shared. So thank you.
One more thing.
Yes, please.
I said you mentioned about the wording. I know for so long we are talking about the right words for our field. So with this credentialing system, the first entry, when people are deciding this is their passion, they are educators, no more providers. So I think the words matter. Because of this credential system, I want to see in the future you don't call K to 12. It's early childhood to 12. So we are their part of the group. We are a team. And because of that too, I also ask for the badge, identify as educators. We are the same benefits, the same, all the trainings educators K to 12 has, we're gonna have it with this. So we're gonna have our status as educators. So we want to hear that before, no K to 12, early educators to 12.
Oh, excellent. All right, well, thank you all. Did you do it at the same time? No, I thought we had one more slide.
Oh, I did too. Okay.
All right, well, just thanking you for your work today, every day. The extra time you put in outside of your work day to help us get this right. I couldn't be more grateful, and everything you do to support us and help us get better on evidence today, clearly. So, and to the team too for your work. So we are really happy to provide this update, and our last meeting of the fiscal year will be on June 11th. We will be at Walker Therapeutic School in Needham, and the primary agenda will be talking about our residential reg revision, but we'll also update you on the budget and where things are and other items. So thank you to the board members.
Thank you. And that's the end of our meeting. I will make a motion to, thank you again for being here. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, well, we'll see you in Needham next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.